Christina, I really like you, and I've been waiting to do this for some time.
We are talking sex and the future. Here's a title to get me demonetized for this one for sure. And this one is directed by Louis Carlos Hewick and Ethan Zvi Kaplan, who also wrote the movie. And as you can probably tell, is a kind of sex robot movie. There's been a few of these recently that I've seen. I've recently reviewed one called 2050, which was kind of about sex robots. There was one called Hotbot I reviewed a little while ago as well. So here we have another one. And this focuses mainly on this guy called Evan, who is a struggling actor, also an Uber driver. And he happens to pick up two delegates from a Middle Eastern country, and these are kind of like they're set up to be almost like a Coming to America style comedy duo. The kind of the prince is particularly ugly, and he's been sort of kept away from mirrors all his life by his family, and he's kind of like duped his way into going some sort of business deal. Anyway, they end up sort of becoming friends, and these Middle Eastern guys end up investing in Evan's roommate's idea for sex robots. And so they go into production and become mega successful. And really the movie's plot, so to speak, is actually about the rise to fame and how it affects people, and how when you are on the way up, certainly with fame, how you then react to other people. It also says something a little bit about love and, and how we can emote to other people and how what matters in the relationship, things like that. And obviously it is a comedy, so we have kind of plenty of kind of jokes along the way. Now, let's talk about first of all what works. Fairly ambitious movie, I have to say, and I appreciate a film that does try to have a message in it, even if it's a kind of a slapstick comedy. And this one still does do that. I have to say, the funniest scene in the movie to me was literally the opening scene where we have Evan doing an audition for a TV part or something, and he has to do a kissing scene with a girl who's got a cold sore on her lip, which is hepatitis. And he's kind of like, doesn't want to do it because obviously she's got this cold sore, and obviously doesn't get the part. It's quite a funny scene and shot really well, I have to say. But that, to be honest with you, was the funniest joke in the movie. So, yeah, there are a couple of kind of other ones which I think are quite funny. And obviously, the whole sex robot thing is, although it's kind of science fiction now, it's one of these things that will probably end up being a reality, probably in a few decades' time. You think back to when you saw Star Trek and they had the communicators, and everyone was like, wow, the future. And now we have mobile phones that do video calling, and that's essentially the kind of what we had in that thing. So it's almost like it's science fiction now, but you can imagine, and it's definitely going to come out of Japan, let's be honest, these things probably will happen at some point, or a version of it. It will start to happen. And I think, to be fair, there are even kind of like arguably, maybe not quite as high-tech versions of these already on the market. It's got quite a big cast, and obviously everyone's kind of quite goofy and kind of fun. It never gets kind of too sort of serious, I have to say. But let's talk about what doesn't work. This is a uber cheap movie. Unfortunately here, the budget really does show through, or should I say, the lack of budget. Because we are meant to believe this guy is, the rising tech star out of kind of Steve Jobs and stuff. But it's done, the kind of the scale of the movie, when we actually see it, is so small, and the effects are kind of so cheap. It almost looks somewhat amateur, I have to say. Also, I feel some of the humour is just a little broad. There's a lot of the humour to me. I mean, humour is somewhat subjective, let's be honest. And, what I find funny, someone else certainly won't find funny. Just ask my ex-girlfriends. But, I've got to say, I think some of the humour here is just a little bit broad for most people. There's also seems to be a hell of a lot of peripheral characters in this one. There's a character called Steph, who was actually one of the kind of the more interesting female leads, but she really doesn't have much to do in the actual plot itself, but is probably one of the most prominent female characters in the movie. So the movie doesn't really have much in the way of, you know, female characters at least, outside of the sex robots, the Steph, and Evan's kind of girlfriend, who really just is eye candy. You know, and then the Steph character doesn't have a lot to do on it. I don't really feel like she had a much impact on the plot outside of one scene where it's essentially, it underscores the beauties in the eye of the beholder thing. That's literally the whole purpose of her character. But it's that there are other characters as well that I feel just seem a little bit peripheral. Our two Middle Eastern characters who come in, you know, they were the initial investors, but they kind of just seem not to have much to do when the plot kind of sort of goes on. I got to say as well, I think the plot here would have benefited from having a shorter timeline. So the movie really rockets through the time, and we have literally the conception of the idea, the rise and the kind of the fall of this kind of this tech company, so to speak, all in the space of one movie. And unfortunately, it just kind of rockets through. So you kind of, it was almost a little bit of a too fast a speed to really digest maybe what is going on. And because I feel the movie is somewhat of a low budget amateur project, it simply is not able to tell the kind of the story in a compelling way, and therefore seems very rushed. You know, like I said, there are some ideas here. There are some things that I feel are worthwhile, and it does try to have some messages in with the kind of the comedy. Comedy, I don't think it could have done with some better jokes. Unfortunately, let's just say that. And ultimately becomes somewhat of a little bit of a slog. Not a terrible movie, but I've got to say, I think it could have been better. It certainly could have helped, I think, with a little bit more work on the script, and certainly maybe a little bit of a few extra dollars on the old budget wouldn't have gone amiss as well here. But an interesting and topical comedy to a degree, because I do think there is mileage to be had in this, and I think we'll see a few more of these sex robot sort of style comedies. And it does try to have, I suppose, arguments for and against. So it does try to have a bit of a well-rounded argument about, you know, sex robots and the morality of them. So there you go. But I don't think it's a particularly fun movie, really. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.